I've been in DC for 2 days. I've met with a lot of high profile people. I'm going to tell you everyone I met with and what they said. This is going to be a long video, but mostly because I don't want to do a part 2. First up, Christian Tom. He is the assistant to the president and director of the White House Office of Digital Strategy. Christian said people like myself were building the scaffolding of new media. They were building the invisible infrastructure for future generations to have a stronger hand in media. We also talked about how President Biden was most proud of his legacy as a digital-first president. He did not always break stories through the traditional media. He was oftentimes giving access and stories to digital and new media creators. That is something that Christian thinks will continue through future administrations and was something that was infinitely powerful to this one. So, of course, someone had to ask, if I am part of the scaffolding that's building new media, and this is so important, and you know that my major platform is TikTok, then what's up with the TikTok ban? President Biden's only move when it comes to the TikTok ban is offering a 90-day extension should TikTok commit to selling the company. Biden nor Trump can actually step in and stop the ban. A Republican Congress wrote the bill. Republican former Congressman Mike Gallagher, who now works for Peter Thiel, was the one to champion the bill. It made it through Congress, it made it through the Senate, and yes, President Biden signed it. And it's not like there was really a way for President Biden to not sign the bill. It had huge bipartisan support in Congress and the Senate. Even with that, as the ban looms, they're starting to realize what an economic apocalypse they've created in a TikTok ban. And there are some Congress people and senators who are trying to walk back the ban now. They're trying to look at this legislation and say, is there anything here that we can do to undo the ban? And you've got folks like Ed Markey, who has always been against the TikTok ban, now trying to go through this law and prove that it is a bill of attainder. A bill of attainder is a law that punishes a person or group without a trial. One way to stop or stay the TikTok ban is to prove the legislation that passed is punishing TikTok before they committed a crime. Hold that thought for now, though. I'm going to come back to more on the TikTok ban in just a couple of minutes. The next person I met with was Ben LaBolt, who is the White House Communications Director and Senior Advisor to the President. Ben talked about the importance of Democrats investing in new media and new influencers. He talked about the pandemic being this global equalizer in which all countries were affected by it, and not everybody recovered as well as we did. Germany's government collapsed, France's government collapsed, the UK had a bunch of problems. Canada's approval rating for their leaders is in the teens. Meanwhile, America recovered from inflation and from the pandemic quicker than any other country. And then we talked about the priorities of the White House as they stand right now, which is the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act and all of these pieces of legislation were passed, but it takes a long time from the legislation being passed to getting a shovel in the ground to start these projects. And so they're trying to get budget out the door and into the hands of the states to start these projects so that Trump can't cancel them. But if you live in a red state and you're counting on these infrastructures coming to fruition for work or for ease of commuting, like that bridge opening between Cincinnati and Kentucky, you are in luck. Because while Republicans found it very fun to campaign against these projects, they are most definitely going to be taking credit for them in the next 4 to 15 months. Biden's style of economics was from the bottom up and the middle out, where Trump really wants to go back to this trickle-down economics thing. Trump will give massive tax breaks to billionaires and to companies and has a goal of privatizing all industries, thinking that private industry will take care of the people and the government won't have to. But they don't take care of the people. That's what we've seen in privatized industries. And something I found interesting is we were talking about how was Biden's different. Biden made a government investment in e-vehicles, the automotive industry, the semiconductor industry, bringing semiconductors, which were invented in America but are produced in Asia, back from Asia so that they'll be made in America, and also invested in clean energy / solar energy. When he made those investments and put government money behind those industries, those investments were met with $1 trillion in matched funds from private industries. So basically, Biden gave a certain amount of money, let's say, to e-vehicle batteries, and then private industries like Ford or GE or whoever was like, oh, Biden's chipping in? Okay, we're going to chip in too because we know this is a guaranteed win. Whereas Trump's style of economics is to just give all the money to the private industry and be like, okay, figure it out. It'll trickle down to the people, right? Wrong. We also talked about how the Affordable Care Act is, in fact, in jeopardy. This is probably one of the things that was the scariest thing I learned. And when you are doing your open enrollment, I heard from a lot of you folks that it was still super expensive. I asked him about that, and he said, is that after the tax credit? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. there is a tax credit for low-income folks who are getting their insurance through the exchange, through the marketplace. So when you're going through and you're seeing the list price and it looks too expensive, make sure that you are checking to see what the price will be after the tax breaks. And I don't have like a formula for it because it's going to be different for everyone, but you've got like 2 more days to figure this out. Trying to enroll for health insurance under the Trump administration will be significantly more difficult. And they are not expecting that any real like special openings for enrollment are going to pop up. And if Trump takes away those tax breaks for the health insurance, 20 million people could be without insurance. So something I'm going to be looking for is Doge or whoever it is trying to line item tax breaks for health insurance. That will directly affect 20 million people who get affordable care through the marketplace. I asked him why independent creators in new media can't get in the press room and can't really get in guilds. And he said that the press briefing room is controlled by the White House Correspondents Association and that he really can't do anything about that from the digital offices or even from the communications offices. So getting an independent media person into that briefing room is seemingly a very difficult challenge. I'm going to look up what it takes to become a part of the White House Correspondents Association. And also, how do you get into the News Guild, the Writers Guilds of the East or West? I also have a call into SAG-AFTRA to see, like, how is it that they made room for influencers, and is there something we could do with the Writers Guild to try and replicate that so that new media could get union representation? So more on that soon. The next person I spoke to was Tom Perez. He's the senior advisor to the president. He was probably the highest ranking person other than actual Joe Biden I got to talk to today. We talked about how disinformation and misinformation is the greatest threat to the American experience, period, full stop. He said what he sees in America right now are folks who are worried, saddened, but also inspired. He said a legacy is planting seeds in a garden that you'll never see, and what they're trying to do with Biden's last 30 days is really ensure a strong legacy. He also said, please remind people when that bridge from Cincinnati to Kentucky opens that Trump promised he would make that bridge happen in 2018. He did not make that bridge happen. Biden made that bridge happen, but it will open while Trump is president. And then the question was asked, why doesn't Biden put his name on any of these projects so that they could know that that's where they came from? And he said, because the states decide on the names of the bridges and whatnot. They don't get to name the projects. We know that horrible things are going to happen under Trump when it comes to immigration, and there were talks about raids on factories and schools and, separating families and just all of the horribleness that there is. And what I want to remind you guys of is that that is not what the average American is looking for. When we poll people and when we get data back on how people feel about immigration, they feel like they want strong borders, but they equally and sometimes more want to see a pathway for people to come the right way or to have a chance to be a citizen. But the Trump administration is looking at things like pulling every single person who is in the military to get citizenship out and deporting them. And Trump's border czar is a merciless man when it comes to what he thinks should be done and how quickly people should be deported and who those people should be. Lastly, I had the chance to speak to actual President Biden today. And there were 2 things on my mind, right? President Biden, by way of Jen Psaki originally, legitimized new media and digital creators in a way that no one else ever has. And I am deeply grateful for that. It was Biden like 3 years ago that got me the invitation to the White House and started inviting me to briefings that made me legitimize and professionalize in a way that no one else wanted to give me a chance to do. And at the same time, I have a duty to try and protect my people, which are TikTok. There is no presidential way to get around the TikTok ban. Not from Biden, not from Trump. It will take an act of Congress. It will take the Supreme Court taking the case. But his feeling on what the escape hatch is for a TikTok ban is that there's an American buyer. And we know that China is not willing to sell the algorithm. Now, there may be some concession made where TikTok can spin off just enough of the product that it constitutes as a critical mass and sell that to an American. We already have all the data here, so that might be enough. Selling that piece of it or something might be enough. But all of this seems like it won't get done before January 19th. So we're going to keep waiting, and I'm going to keep fighting and keep trying and keep taking meetings with people and trying to explain to them what a disaster it would be to lose this.